Every time you get on a plane, you're placing this incredible amount of trust in people you'll never even meet. We all think about the pilots, right? But behind them is a team of professionals who have inspected, maintained, and literally signed off on that aircraft, declaring it safe to fly. These are the real gatekeepers of the sky. So let's really dig into that. What does it actually take to be that person, to hold that kind of responsibility in your hands? It is so much more than just being good with tools. It's this whole journey that's built on tough standards, deep knowledge, and honestly, an unbreakable ethical code. So let's break down that journey. Okay, first things first, you gotta know that the FAA certifies two main types of maintenance techs. We're gonna focus on the mechanic. The easiest way to think about their certificate is like a passport. It's based on their personal skill and knowledge, and it goes with them wherever they go. A repairman certificate? That's more like a company ID badge. It's tied to one specific job at one specific place. If they quit, that certificate basically goes back in the drawer. Now, before you even think about getting certified, you have to understand the absolute bedrock rules of this profession. And these aren't suggestions or best practices. No, these are the non-negotiable, black and white ground rules straight from the Code of Federal Regulations. Rule number 1 is simple: no cheating. The FAA has a complete zero-tolerance policy here. If you get caught cheating on a written test, we're talking copying, getting help, anything like that, you are banned. Not just from that test, but from applying for any FAA certificate for a full year. There are no do-overs. Second, you can't lie, ever. In aviation, the paperwork, the logbook, that's the aircraft's official life story. Every single repair and inspection is in there. Falsifying any part of that story, even a tiny detail, isn't just a simple mistake. It's a career-ending move that can get your certificate suspended or, even worse, permanently revoked. And rule number 3, this one's a big one. This job demands total mental clarity. Any kind of drug conviction or even just refusing to take a mandatory drug or alcohol test can mean you're denied a certificate in the first place or you lose the one you have. There is just zero room for impairment when hundreds of lives are depending on your judgment. And just so we're all on the same page about what those words mean, suspended means the FAA puts your certificate on ice for a while. You can get it back. But revoked, that's permanent. It's gone. You're done. The FAA doesn't mess around because these rules are the foundation of trust for the entire system. All right, so if you can live by those rules, how do you actually earn the certificate? Let's walk through the path to getting that highly respected airframe and powerplant license, whatever one in the biz calls the A&P. The whole journey really breaks down into 4 major steps. First, the basics. You gotta be at least 18, and you have to be able to read, speak, and understand English. Second, you need the experience. You can get this either by going to an FAA-approved school or through documented on-the-job training. Third, you've got to pass not 1, not 2, but 3 tough written exams. And finally, you have to prove you can walk the walk with intense oral and practical tests, with an examiner watching every single thing you do. And just to give you an idea of the commitment we're talking about, if you go the on-the-job training route for both the airframe and powerplant ratings, you need a bare minimum of 30 months of practical, hands-on experience. That's 2.5 years of working on aircraft before you're even allowed to take the final tests. Okay, so you did it. You put in the time, passed the tests, and you have your A&P certificate. That piece of paper grants you some incredible power and authority. But, and this is a big but, that power comes with very specific responsibilities and some very clear lines you cannot cross. So what can an A&P mechanic do? A lot, actually. They can perform and supervise all sorts of maintenance. And here's the big one. They have the authority to approve an aircraft for return to service after they've done minor repairs. They can also perform those super detailed 100-hour inspections that are critical for aviation safety. But the limitations are just as important. A mechanic can't just go and do a major repair on a propeller or start tinkering with flight instruments. That's specialized stuff. Here's a really key detail. They can't supervise a job that they themselves haven't done satisfactorily before. And most importantly, an A&P mechanic cannot sign off on a major repair. For that, you need an even higher level of certification, called an inspection authorization, or an IA. It's all about checks and balances. So we've got the rules, we know the path, we see the privileges. But what happens when all that theory smacks right into the high-pressure reality of the real world? Let's look at a real-life scenario that shows you exactly what is on the line. All right, picture this. A technician is doing maintenance at an airline and finds an ice shield on the fuselage, a really important part, has some pretty bad impact damage. The book says you gotta replace it. Simple as that. So the technician does exactly what they're supposed to do and removes the damaged part. But then, boom, problem. The inventory system was wrong. There's no replacement part in stock. In that plane, it has a gate full of passengers and a departure time that is getting closer by the second. The pressure is on big time. An inspector from the company comes over, sees the situation, and gives a simple order. Reinstall the old one. Just like that. And now, the technician is in a truly impossible position. See, here's the heart of it. There is a fundamental rule in aviation maintenance. Once you remove a part for being damaged, it is officially considered unairworthy. You cannot, under any circumstances, just put it back on the plane. The technician knows this is a straight-up violation of the safety regulations. So what happened in that moment? The technician chose the rules over the order. They refused, flat out. That one word, no, is the absolute definition of what it means to be a professional in this field. But the inspector, probably feeling the heat, gets desperate. He doubles down and orders something that is just shockingly illegal. He tells them to basically patch it up with some 5-minute epoxy, sand it, and paint over it. That's not a repair. That is a dangerous, fraudulent cover-up. The technician did the only thing a person with integrity could do. They walked away from the job. But here's the part of the story that's going to give you chills. The inspector found somebody else who was willing to bend the rules. The illegal fix was done, and that plane pushed back from the gate on time, completely unairworthy, with everyone on board having no idea. A story like that just forces you to ask the real question, right? When the schedule, the company, maybe even your boss, are all pushing you to cut a corner, what's the ultimate code a mechanic has to live by? Well, it all comes down to this. This isn't from a federal regulation. It's from the Professional Aviation Maintenance Association's Code of Ethics. It's more like a personal oath. It says, "The safety and lives of others are dependent on my skill and judgment. Therefore, I shall never knowingly subject others to risks which I would not be willing to assume for myself or those who are dear to me." That, right there, is what it really takes to be a gatekeeper of the sky.